Hi, I'm Jason Graves, and never trust anyone who needs a haircut. This is Drakkhen, and it contains a poem. Not literally, this is text that appears in the game. I just printed it to a piece of paper, but allow me to read this poem to you. When the wind is clear, the sky will darken. When the thunder rolls, the quest must go on. That was supposed to be the famous Emily Dickinson poem, The Wind's Visit, but due to the odd circumstances of this game's creation, so much of the text comes across as mangled. Drakkhen is a port of a French PC game by the Japanese developer Kemco. What I just read was an American poem, which was translated into French for the original game, which was then translated into Japanese for the Super Famicom release, which was then translated into English for our edition. Imagine playing a game with text that essentially went through Google Translate twice, and in the poem's case, 3 times. Well, that's the reality the Super Nintendo version of Drakkhen happens to stand in. As soon as you start, an oddity that may hint to an external origin is the phenomenon of referring to the Super Nintendo's controller's buttons as keys, as in keys on a keyboard on a computer. They're not hiding the ball. This is an obtusely burly Western-style computer RPG. It might be the only game in the genre I've played where random encounters can occur if you're standing completely still. On the main menu, you can either start with a default party or create your own characters. This, however, is a fictitious decision, as you are forced to select one of each of the 4 available classes. My angst and anxiety casting doubt in my ability to adequately assign the correct stats to the appropriate classes influenced my decision to use the default party. Every character is a figurehead. They're complete blank slates, and the plot of our adventure is just an internal conflict within this dragon family. There's a civil war going on. You align with one of the sides, and get the 8 MacGuffins to win the game. When I said dragons, I meant to say Drakkens, which are supposed half-breeds between humans and dragons. Most of the Drakkens hate humans, or at least their goons do. You might enter a castle where, in storyline, you have a friendly relationship with the Drakken, but that doesn't stop their underlings from harassing and attacking you. This is a unique 3D, first-person, open-world RPG, and, unless I'm mistaken, the effect isn't achieved with Mode 7. The map is continuous and far too large for a single image like Mode 7 would require. It is a real, vector-based paradise. There are essentially 2 modes, the first-person overworld and the third-person combat/dungeon screens. Drakkhen is the type of game where the first random encounter can happen seconds after starting and could result in instant death for one of your party members. The start of this game throws a newborn baby directly into the pool without as much as a floaty to buoy yourself. Here's a quick rundown of how this game begins. A wall of text informs you that you should go to this castle. On your way there, you will encounter at least one random battle. An enemy appears on screen, and you'll press every available button pondering just how to attack. Hopefully, you realize that your inputs are largely ineffective, and this game uses a full auto-battle system. You go inside the castle. There are electric waves preventing you from going anywhere, so you'll play around with the menus, learning that the middle right option is used to hit switches. You have a 1 in 4 chance of hitting the correct switch to make the force field disappear. If you hit the wrong one, you need to fight an enemy. After exploring the castle for a little bit, you'll hopefully notice this little half-transparent white squiggle on the bottom left-hand corner in one specific room. Because if you don't, you already can't progress with the game. If you did, however, you will find a dragon-like creature who tells you to leave this castle and go east. At this point, you might think that you're getting somewhere in the game, so you pull out a map with a compass and go east like the dragon said. Only, you can't cross the giant glowing arrows, or go outside the dotted lines on your map. When leaving the castle initially, you need to defy all logic and go the exact opposite direction the dragon told you to go. For you see, there is a teleporter to the west that will transport you to where you need to go to progress with the game. To make matters worse, when you're at level 1 and only have starting equipment, basically everything in the overworld will kill you. The only place you can consistently grind is the castle that you just came from, but if you try and go back, a shark will have appeared in the moat and will eat anyone who tries to enter. If your character dies, there is no obvious way to revive them. You need to know that only these buildings called Anak can do it. The worst part is that they literally could not have spawned you further away from one of these. I know that committing to a huge series like this, where I'm going to play a whole bunch of old RPGs, that grinding is going to become a way of life. And with this game, at least it's easy to grind because the game plays itself. You just have to like set the controller down and you'll win fights and level up eventually. This approach does have some flaws though. You only get experience if you attack the enemies, so naturally your wizard will lag behind in experience. Besides, after the initial wall, you really never need to grind. The level ups are incredibly sparse, and when I beat the game, my highest character was only level 8. Not only is there little to no player agency inside of battle, but the outcomes seem almost completely random. There was a boss fight that completely steamrolled me twice, but the third time I challenged, I went in there with the exact same configuration, and he blew up almost instantly. Your HP and MP regenerate, so oftentimes the optimal strat inside of a dungeon is to just wait for your energy to come back before leaving a room. If I had to use one word to describe the item and equipment system, I would use the word bizarre. There's only one store in the entire game, and it's not even marked on your map. It's in between these two houses near your initial spawn, by the way. You can also encounter the traveling merchant as a random encounter, but it's just that. Random. Things cost so much money that they're usually not worth buying. Your equipment breaks all the time, so it seems like you'll need to constantly be buying stuff. But here's a trick I discovered all by myself, and a quick skimming of every other video about this game reveals that many others did the exact same thing. Inside the dungeons, you might see a shield or a piece of armor on the wall. You can take this stuff off the wall, equip it, give it to another party member, sell it, whatever, it's yours, you can take it. But here's the kicker. When you leave the castle and come back, the equipment respawns. Keep entering and leaving a castle as many times as needed to get a full set of armor for everyone. There's no indication of what different pieces of gear do to your stat, so I just equipped whatever looked the coolest. Drakkhen is what I like to call a teller, not a shower. There's a part where you go to this castle and the game makes it a point to have this flowery text explicitly depicting how a gruesome slaughter would have been if this game had the resources or the time to show you what is actually going on. Here's a strange puzzle. A drawbridge shuts in front of you and you need to cast a spell called Unlock to raise it. Aside from some navigational hiccups, there's not a lot of classic cryptic roadblocks you might expect in a game like this. Drokken is rather straightforward. It is, at least once you get over its initial hurdles. The hardest thing to figure out might be that you're going to need to run away from a lot of fights. It's not immediately obvious. It involves both the L and R buttons, but you don't press or hold them, you must mash them to flee. This game's final boss is hilarious. So Drakkhen was the first RPG on the Super Nintendo. When I came up with this idea to play through, just run through all the RPGs on the Super Nintendo, I assumed that Final Fantasy II would be the first game I would play, but imagine my surprise when I looked it up and I was wrong. It was good old Drokken. The Super Nintendo was when the RPG genre really stepped out of its shadow. All the games on the NES could be classified as just Dragon Quest clones, but as Drokken proves, on the Super Nintendo, there's a lot more diversity, and they really are just willing to step out and do new things. As I move forward, I'm willing to bet that most of the games I play are going to be more user-friendly, but I'm not sure they're going to be more unique than Drokken, and if you know anything about me, it's that being unique just raises my opinion of a game tenfold. So, Drakkhen's okay. It's okay in my book. The thing that's most likely to stick with me is the funk. You've been listening to it this whole video. It doesn't really fit, but it's awesome nevertheless. I appreciate this game for what it is, a prehistoric Elder Scrolls game. But I don't think it succeeds as a whole. The game is obtuse up front, but once you break through its initial facade, there's not much underneath the hood. It gives you free range, but the NPCs are worthless, and there aren't really many secrets to discover. Drakkhen is just a weird game where you roleplay as a violent arm of a quibbling dragon family.